Welcome to Doppelnamers, where we connect the dots between people who share the same name. My name is Elizabeth Russell, and this is the story of my doppelnamer, a pioneer named Elizabeth Russell, who was tried for murder in Eau Claire, Wisconsin in 1892. At the time, it was the most famous murder trial in Wisconsin's history. With me are my good friends Mary Jean Stead and Kathy Boyle Almeida. Neither MJ nor Kath knows anything about the story. They will be meeting the characters and hearing the facts right along with the listeners. MJ and Kath, hi, welcome back.
Hi.
Hi.
I really appreciate you being here, and I'm sure the listeners do too, because whatever thoughts and questions you have, the listeners probably have as well. We'll get to the story in a moment, but first, as always, we share somebody else's doppelnamer story. And today, we'll meet another Thomas Russell. If you're just joining us, Thomas Russell was the absent lumberjack husband of our story's main character, Elizabeth Russell. So here's one of Thomas's doppelnamers. In 1937, Thomas Russell was a viola player with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. I'm pretty sure he wasn't intentionally named after our Thomas, so these guys were definitely doppelnamers. Thomas the musician wrote several books about the London Philharmonic, noting in one that the orchestra's woodwind section was of such high caliber that it was known as the Royal Family.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Thomas wrote that he couldn't concentrate on playing his own part because the woodwinds were so fantastic. I mean, that's usually the case, but it's nice to see it in print. Thomas became a business manager for the London Philharmonic, and then he became its managing director. And apparently, the managing director got to decide who would become the orchestra's principal conductor. Because when the BBC jettisoned Sir Adrian Boult in 1950, Thomas Russell invited Sir Adrian to become the principal conductor of the London Philharmonic. According to the internet, in the early years of his conductorship, the finances of the London Philharmonic were perilous, and Sir Adrian Boult subsidized the orchestra from his own funds. So that might have had something to do with it. But it turned out to be a bad move for Thomas Russell, because Sir Adrian Boult proceeded to throw Thomas under the bus.
Ooh.
Thomas Russell was a member of the Communist Party. We're in the 1950s. In the 30s, he was a player. By the 50s, he's the manager.
The manager. Gotcha.
Got it.
So Boult protected him for a time, but when matters hit the boiling point, Sir Adrian Boult caved to the orchestra mob, and Thomas was forced out.
The orchestra
mob.
Thomas Russell. Okay, ready to see what's happening with Elizabeth Russell back in Wisconsin?
Yes.
Absolutely.
In our last episode, we heard Peter Erickson describe his situation as a live-in employee at Elizabeth Russell's farm and the sexual demands Elizabeth made of him on a regular basis. We learned that Elizabeth was quite jealous when Peter paid attention to other women, and we learned that Peter quite enjoyed paying attention to other women. Do you have any questions or impressions before we move on?
All right. Peter's about 22.
And Elizabeth's in her late 40s.
Okay. Thomas is away a lot of the time.
I don't have any questions. I'm just dying to know the next step.
Okay, so how about we hear from Elizabeth herself about Peter's time on the farm? In her trial testimony, Elizabeth basically confirmed Peter's story. He was walking past her farm one day in July 1888. She asked if he wanted a job, and he said yes. Because remember, he had been working at the lumber mill, and he didn't like that, and he wanted to be a farmer.
Right.
So Peter came to work in July, but he stayed there only until January. According to Elizabeth, he worked until January, and then he went to the woods and worked for the Valley Lumber Company under the instructions of Mr. Russell. Okay, pop quiz. Who owns the Valley Lumber Company?
Oh, what was his name?
You know
Carson?
it. Yes.
Carson.
Yeah. William Carson. Lawyer. How long did Peter stay there? Elizabeth. Until the middle of March. Then he came back and told me Mr. Russell sent him back to work on the farm. Lawyer. How long did he work after that? Elizabeth. From that time, he remained until February 1891. A few months before he left, he said he would have to have bigger wages or he would leave. Then he left my place on February 14th.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the basic history. Peter worked on the farm for 6 months. Then he went to work with Thomas in the woods for 3 months. Then he came back to the farm for another 2 years. Then in February 1891, all of a sudden, Peter starts demanding higher wages. Also at that time, Peter and his brother Ed started negotiating with their parents, the Ericsons, to turn over their farm to Peter and Ed in exchange for Peter and Ed caring for the parents forever into their old age. So against this backdrop, Peter left Elizabeth's farm on February 14th. Now we're in 1891.
So Aaron was the other brother, is that right?
Adam.
Adam, right. So, okay, we haven't heard about Ed yet before, have we?
No.
Right, okay, Ed's new.
Ed
Adam.
is, I believe, older, slightly older.
Okay.
Ed was married and had kids at this point.
That's right, whereas Adam lived in the house with Elizabeth and Peter.
Yeah, Adam was younger.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
Right. So after Peter left, his younger brother Adam kept working for Elizabeth. And here's some more testimony. Lawyer, when did Peter return? Elizabeth, the next time I saw him was on February 27th. Remember, he'd left on February 14th.
Mm-hmm.
My attention was first called to Peter by his brother Adam, who said, "Here comes Peter, let's give him a salute."
Subtle.
So Adam pulled a mouth organ out of his pocket, which he always carried, and began to play while Elizabeth drummed on the dishpan with her fingers.
Nice.
Wow.
Now, that was Elizabeth's testimony. Adam testified about this incident as well. Adam said he had a mouth organ and Mrs. Russell a tin pail for a drum, and they had played there and made lots of noise. They did this to cod Peter. Cod means to mock, trick, or make fun of.
Oh, it wasn't a sincere parade.
Oh.
It was not. It was to cod him.
Oh.
Adam said that Peter had left and they'd kept up the noise for some time. What Adam and Elizabeth were doing is something called charivari.
Okay.
Never heard of that.
Here's what they have to say about charivari. Where? On the internet. Charivari was a ritual used by medieval and early modern Europeans to chastise community members who failed to conform to social expectations, especially sexual ones. Examples include a widow who remarried, a wife who beat her husband,
Whoa.
notably not a husband who beat his wife,
Yes.
or a couple who failed to have children. In France, where this term originated, teenage boys and young unmarried men usually led such rituals. The Utes, would parade around through the streets, making rough music by banging pots and pans, shouting mocking insults, and sometimes threatening violence.
Oh, boy.
If the victim of the charivari handled the situation effectively by paying off the Utes with wine or money, the ritual usually ended peacefully and the matter was laid to rest. So, shall we reenact the charivari that greeted Peter upon his
yeah.
return?
Yes.
That's-
Good charamari. Calamari?
well done.
Who started the charivari? Was it Elizabeth or Adam?
It was Adams. He said, "Here comes
Oh.
Peter, let's give him a salute." So, charavari's done. Why do you think Peter was returning to the farm?
Try to collect some more money.
To get Adam, his brother, away from Elizabeth? I think he
Okay.
missed Elizabeth.
Are we way off base?
Let's find out.
I don't think he missed Elizabeth.
I think he's teasing her.
Oh, that could be.
Remember some points from our last episode. First, Adam was dating the neighbor girl, Bertha Jensen. We also learned that sometime around Christmas, New Year's that year, there had been a dance at the Ericksons' farm. And I told you that the dance put this entire story in motion and proved catastrophic for several of our characters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, MJ, you commented that a barn dance in Wisconsin in winter must have been pretty cold.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm pretty sure that at least two of our characters found a way to keep warm that
Okay.
night.
Ooh.
Peter was returning to the farm that day, February 27th, 2 months after the dance, with the intent of breaking the news that a week earlier, on February 21st, he had gotten married.
Oh, that's a lot.
Wow. Yeah.
We'll see in a minute who Peter married, but first, here's how Elizabeth described what happened after the charivari died down. Lawyer, what next was done? Elizabeth. Adam went to the barn to take care of the cattle, and Peter sat by the stove while I got supper. Lawyer. What did Peter say? Elizabeth. He told me that his father had given him his place, and that he was to take care of his father and mother for the rest of their lives. Lawyer. Where did Peter sleep that night? Elizabeth. In the bedroom off the kitchen, where he was in the habit of sleeping. Lawyer. When was Peter's marriage first spoken of? Elizabeth. In the evening, about 7 o'clock. She knew the exact time. Lawyer. What did Peter say? Elizabeth. He said he wondered what I would say if he told me that he was going to be married in 4 weeks. What did you say? Elizabeth. I didn't see any reason why he shouldn't. Lawyer. What next did he say? Elizabeth. He said, what would you say if I told you that I was already married? Elizabeth said, I told him that I thought he was a darned fool to get married with only $1 in his pocket and dirty underclothes on. And she then pointed out, I did not use the word devilish fool or damn. It was a darned fool. Lawyer, what did Peter say? Elizabeth. He replied that he had a well-filled pocketbook and Ed Erickson's shirt on. Then Peter dropped the bomb. On February 21st, he had married his brother Adam's girlfriend, Bertha Jensen.
Oh, wow.
What?
How did Adam feel about that?
Oh, that's right. Adam was dating Bertha?
Yeah.
Peter never dated Bertha?
Peter didn't even know her until the dance.
Okay.
Ooh, they hooked up at the dance.
Gotcha.
So Peter and Bertha did not know one another before the dance.
Oh, wow.
They met that night, and we can only surmise something happened.
Wow. Something happened. The tides happened quickly.
Because 1 month later, under circumstances that I consider odd, they're just married.
Mm-hmm.
So listen to these circumstances. Their engagement was announced 1 day before the marriage.
1 day.
1 day. They were married by a justice of the peace outside in February in the freezing cold.
Oh, wow.
Standing on the county line between Trempealeau and Eau Claire counties.
Huh.
That's strange.
Right?
Why was that necessary?
I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a logical reason why they were straddling the county line. But I have to say it raises some questions in my mind.
Yeah.
Very odd.
And I've been trying to look into this, and I can't find any. The only thing that came to my mind was, were they intentionally looking ahead to try to invalidate the marriage?
Maybe.
Yeah. Where was the justice of the peace? Was he from one of the counties? And
He
not
was
the
from
other?
one of, he was authorized in one of the counties and not the other.
Okay.
Oh, so it would make it suspicious. Maybe someone could challenge it.
So Bertha's father, John Jensen, was a witness at the weird wedding, as was Peter's brother, Ed Erickson. But that's it. Bertha's mother, Maggie Jensen, didn't even know it was happening.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't sound like anybody else was there. I've seen the marriage certificate, and it doesn't sound like anybody else was there. Just boom, married to basically a stranger.
One witness.
Was it part of the deal with his parents that he had to be married?
I don't know. That's an interesting thought.
Did Adam know?
No!
Oh, wow.
How often did Adam see Bertha?
Apparently not often enough.
Wow, Adam must have been mad.
Yeah.
Oh, and on the marriage certificate, Peter listed his occupation as lawyer.
Really?
Yeah, Peter was not a lawyer.
Yeah.
You didn't put farmer?
No. So there's just a lot of things about this marriage that don't add up. But let's just go with it and say they were legally married.
Okay.
So back at the farm, both Elizabeth and Adam are hearing this news.
Oh, man.
And we have to hear that neither one of them's very happy.
Yeah, that's huge.
Oh, boy.
Maybe they weren't sober when they got married, because everyone in this town is like drunk.
At the trial, Elizabeth testified, when he told me that Bertha was his wife, I said, Why, that's Adam's girl, and I don't think it's right for one brother to cut the other one out. Peter replied that it was none of my damn business. When Elizabeth testified about telling Adam that Peter was married, the lawyer asked, what did Adam do? Elizabeth said he got up and went outdoors. He left the table first. After breakfast, I went to the barn. Adam was on the barn stairs, sitting with his head in his hands and his elbows on his knees. He looked sad. Lawyer, did you speak to him?
Sure.
Elizabeth, I said, boy, cheer up. There's more than one girl in the world. That was big talk, though, because Adam testified that Elizabeth told him Peter would be very sorry for his marriage, and that Elizabeth was crying most of the time.
Oh.
So Peter had come back to announce the marriage and, like you said, Kath, to settle up with Elizabeth. But according to Elizabeth, Peter had problems of his own. When it turned out she only owed him $41, Peter started crying.
Oh, no. It's a rough day.
Like a whirlwind of emotions. Yeah.
$41 is not going to go too far.
Elizabeth asked Peter if he was sorry he'd gotten married, and his reply was, he had so much trouble he did not know what to do. Turns out there was a very large debt due on his parents' farm, which he and his brother had just acquired. Elizabeth, I think quite sensibly, asked if he hadn't known that prior to taking the place.
Yeah.
And Peter just didn't reply. Peter definitely was not a lawyer.
No.
So Peter's underwater in debt. And
It's
now
very nice of the parents to not inform them of the situation and to say you're responsible to take care of us and you have a lot of debt.
Yeah.
I agree.
But back then times were tough. Here you go.
You deal with it.
Here you go.
And take care of us.
Yeah.
Sign here. Bye.
Feeling bad for him.
So Peter's underwater in debt. Now he has a wife. Do we figure he'll take Bertha to the farm he now owns and start working on his problems from there? Of course not. Peter struck a deal to do more work for Elizabeth Russell.
Oh.
Oh.
And in March 1891, he brought Bertha back to Elizabeth's farm where they all started living under the same roof. What could go wrong?
Oh. Wow.
Boy. Yeah, that sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
And they're living in the room next to the kitchen
Yes,
still?
exactly.
Oh, no.
Is Adam still living there too?
Yes,
Okay.
And the dad upstairs.
upstairs.
It's a full house.
Well, things went very wrong for Bertha Jensen Erickson.
Uh-oh. Oh.
Bertha died at Elizabeth Russell's farm on April 1st, 1891.
Oh, not Bertha.
She was 17 years old.
17.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Only a month at the house. Bertha.
It's
So-
very shocking to me to know that she was 17. Like when you're talking about getting married, I'm thinking, okay, she's probably in her 20s.
He was 22.
Yeah.
So he was young too. Wow. That's brutal.
Next on Doppelnamers, we'll meet a new character whose doppelnamer is best known for the TV show I Love Lucy. We'll learn how Bertha met her death, and was she buried alive? Doppelnamers is a production of Harriet's Guides, LLC. Our theme music was composed and performed by Mary Jean Stead, orchestrated and arranged by Janine Lynn Claps. The Doppelnamers logo was designed by Kay Lum. Thanks to my co-hosts, Mary Jean Stead and Kathy Boyle Almeida. Thanks to the Wisconsin State Law Library, the Wisconsin Historical Society, the archivists at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Take care, Doppelnamers.